Hi, it's Margie from Marjielous Creations, and welcome to my Learn to Crochet series. So in this series, each video is going to contain a little bit of information about crocheting, and we'll start at the basics and work our way through to more experienced stuff. So if you're a beginner crocheter, we're going to go over all the techniques that you need to learn to crochet. If you're a little bit more experienced, we're going to go over other techniques that will help you bring your crochet projects to the next level. On this video, we're going to go over So gauge is something that is very important when you are working with clothes. And so this is actually the houndstooth pattern. So it was a simple single crochet, half double crochet pattern around, right? And to start off with, this was exactly the same pattern. So chain 50 is how I started. And one was done with an I hook. The other one was done with the J hook. And you can see the difference here in the length. That gives me, for the whole entire thing, so that gives me an extra 4 centimeters, which means I have more stretch, it's a bigger size. And so exactly, again, the same thing with the flowers. It was done with a J hook, and this one was done with an I hook, and it worked up just bigger. And so I'm going to share a picture right here of one of my friend's work. She was knitting and she followed the pattern exactly how it was, and it worked up great. It was beautiful. And then she went to make it again, and I was talking to her about gauge, and she used the proper gauge for the second one. And so you could see the first one is on top and the second one was on bottom, and you can see how much bigger the bottom one was done with the proper gauge than it was for the first one. So there's so many things. So if you've had problems with, your toques not working, with your hats not working, with your clothing not being the right sizing, that's why you need to figure out your gauge. Some things, it doesn't matter. Like if you're making a scarf, gauge really doesn't matter because it'll just be however long you want it. Any form of clothing, you really, really need to use proper gauge. So we will need our tape measure, stitch counter, your yarn in whatever color you're working with. And so I'm just doing up a sample swatch. So I'm just using a ball of leftover. This was actually I love this yarn I got in a box of goodies from a friend. It was really nice. And I'm going to use my each hook, which is a 5mm. When doing gauge, your pattern will say 9 stitches and 4 rows will be, 2 inches or 5 centimeters tall. So to do your pattern gauge, you would you'd make 9 stitches. So you'd want 9 half double crochets. So you would chain 10, gauge will vary based on how tight you hold your yarn here. So, if you're pulling through and you've got it pulled tight and it's really hard to get through, your work is going to be tighter. I know I normally have a loose tension. So then we half double crochet 9 back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, and chain 1. And then we're going to turn it, and we're going to do 4 rows like this. So that's 1 row, 4 rows in total with 9 half double crochets across. Okay, so there we go. That is done. So now we would take our tape measure and we would measure from there to here. So that is exactly 4 centimeters. So that means I'm using my H hook, 4 rows of half double crochet, I know is 4 centimeters. So if the pattern says you need to have 4 rows at 5 centimeters, you would need to try it again with a different hook. So at this point, I would be below gauge for my pattern. If you're below your gauge, if you're not quite at the same height, you would need to go up in a hook size so that your stitches are larger. If you are over, because we're trying to get it to the 5 centimeter mark, if you were over and let's say you did it at a 6 centimeter mark, you would need to go down a hook size until you got to the right measurement. So this one was done with my H hook, and that was at 4 centimeters. This one was done with an I hook. An I hook is 5.25 millimeters, and it gives me 4.5 centimeters. So sometimes you might end up having to go up 2 hook sizes, depending on the pattern, depending on the writer. The author of the pattern makes the gauge based on how they crochet. So then I did it with a J hook. So a J hook is a 6 millimeter. And look at that. That is exactly 5 centimeters. So I know when I'm working this particular pattern that I need to use a J hook because that's what I got my 4 rows with 9 half double crochets to be 5 centimeters. So this is one way of doing it, doing your pattern up like that, and then figuring out how long it is. Some patterns will have you measure the actual stitch, right? So the stitch, these are half double crochets. So this is our top row of our half double crochet. So it's inserted in there. And so with a J hook, I am at just about 1.5 centimeters with my J hook for my height of my one stitch. Okay. For my I hook, I am just over 1 centimeter. So I'm 1.2, 1.3 roughly centimeters for my I hook. And for my H hook, I would be, oh, look at that, I'm right at 1 centimeter for my stitch size. So the third way that people sometimes do gauges is they have you crochet up a whole bunch of rows, and then they have you measure, let's say here, in a 5 centimeter, how many stitches you have. So 5 centimeters here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the pattern would say 6 stitches in 5 centimeters. That would be how you would measure that. Something else that's important with gauge is if you are using different brands of yarn, they may say they're all a 4 worsted weight, but they may end up being slightly different in size. So these ones are all different brand, and they are just all slightly, very slightly different sizes. So if you're working with different, so if I was going to do a project with these 3 yarns, the white section would end up being just slightly bigger than the other 2, because these ones are just a bit thinner. So whenever you're working with a project, try to make sure you are always working with the same type of yarn so that your project ends up working really nice. I hope this really helps you with figuring out your gauge and figuring out how big or how small your projects need to be and what hook sizes you really need to use. So I hope this video helped you learning your new stitch or technique. If you have any questions, please comment below or contact me on any of my social media. So on Ravelry, Facebook, Instagram, and I'll try to help you out. Thank you guys very much for watching, and as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Why are you not autofocusing? That I did in lesson, insert the number here while typing it.